Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Threshold. Yep, that's right, another pre-modern deck tech thingy. Going to be looking at a sweet deck, definitely a good one, um, and yeah, so let's get to it. All right, so this is an old block standard extended legacy deck from a quadrillion years ago. Of course, we can't play all the same cards for the most part, like stuff like Force and Brainstorm, of course, are banned. Things like Duels are unavailable, but everything else is more or less there. We even play Gush, although Gush is just not enough islands to consistently play it. Like I could see playing a couple copies, but I mean it's kind of a pain. So yeah, I don't think that's really going to work, but that's okay. That's okay. Um, and this is a tempo deck, of course. Aggro control, so just playing dudes, beating down, countering stuff, that kind of thing. Really trying to just disrupt your opponent long enough just so you can beat the crap out of them with a Werebear. Nice thing though is it's a three-color deck, but the mana base is actually pretty good, of course, because it's triple. Um, it's the blue, green, white, right, color combination. So those are all allied colors for the most part. Obviously, it's base blue, green with a splash of white, so that can make it a little wonky, but I found a nice thing around that. And it's consistent, right? Bunch of cantrips, so you find what you need, all that good stuff. Pretty much do the same thing every game. You know, you don't have to worry about flooding out because you can shuffle them away or whatever. That kind of good stuff. So yeah, very consistent deck, pretty sweet. And yeah. Let's look at the deck list, right? Okay, so pretty small creature base, right? We don't need a ton, especially since some of them, like Nimble Mongoose, of course, has a shroud, right? So they can't target it. Mongoose, Werebear, and of course Mystic Enforcer are your threshold guys. Mystic Enforcer is okay. Obviously a bit wonky here, especially with the Winter Orbs, but it's still a good finisher, right? If you know, and it flies over walls and things like that, which is quite nice. Um, oh, and I guess it has Pro Black, so I guess there's a little bit of value there, right? So I guess if someone's playing Dark Banishing or whatever, so that's something. That's something at least. Then we have all the cantrips, right, to set up Threshold. We have Mental Note, right, Portent, Sleight of Hand, Sylvan Library, and of course something like Opt might be better than Sleight of Hand. I don't know. I don't think it's a huge deal. Although again, Opt has some bonuses, right? Like you can hold up mana uh, for like a counter spell or something, or a hard cast days or whatever. And if they don't do anything, you can opt instead. So it gives you that option. So Slight, Opt, pretty close. Um, you know, so I'm not really sure which one you want to play, but you need some number of cantrips. And of course, Sylvan Library, very good with a bunch of fetch lands. May or may not want to play another one in the main deck or sideboard just because it can draw you a bunch of cards and put you pretty far ahead, which is quite nice. So yeah, Sylvan Library is very sweet. And our Disruption, nothing too wonky here. Swords, Mana Leak, Daze, Counterspell, Stifle, and Winter Orb. Winter Orb's very nice. I chose it over a Wasteland just because, well, I think it's just better than Wasteland in this deck. Um, because there's a lot of decks that that are pretty basic heavy, so Wasteland just isn't going to do enough. Um, so yeah, and especially there's a lot of decks that are just really mana intensive, and Winter Orb is very good against those decks. Something like the Rock or Landstill or whatever, or any of the other board control decks. Um, and of course, Stifle, again, another sweet card. Meddling Mage, I only play a couple main deck. They can be, sometimes they're just a Grizzly Bear, but sometimes they're very good and buy you a bunch of turns. Sometimes they name combo pieces, you know, and so it stops your opponent from being able to combo out. So that's another good thing. And just being on a bear is quite good. And of course, the only thing really wonky about the mana base would be the Treva's Ruins. Well, the Treva's Ruins are actually pretty good with Winter and as well as this deck has a very low mana curve. There's like only a couple cards that cost more than uh, 2 mana, basically just the Mystic Enforcer, and only a couple 2 mana cards. Treva's Ruins is pretty good. Being able to, this I think is, especially if you really want to cast like a counter spell, like in the mid game, um, something like a Treva's Ruins can help with that, right? Because it looks like, depending on how you need to fetch and stuff, just having the flexibility of this painless 3-color land is pretty nice. It's pretty nice. I think it's definitely good here. Definitely gonna do too much. I think 1 is obvious. You should always play 1 in this kind of deck. I think 2 is probably better because you're more likely to draw it, but still not going to, very unlikely to draw 2. But anywhere from 1 to 2. 3 I don't think is really where you want to be with these kind of lands, because it can be wonky and make you too vulnerable to wasteland, that kind of thing. So, and then yeah, of course the sideboard, which is, I mean, typical Knight and Tutor stuff. I got a couple, targets for those, like Sabo's Web, Null Rod, Curse Totem, even Chill. Meddling Mage for more hate, Naturalize, of course, obviously, Crypt against things, Chill, Hydroblast against red decks. Nothing too revolutionary here. Pretty stock standard stuff you're used to seeing in these type of decks in Premodern. So yeah, nothing too wonky here. You're gonna see a lot of sort of 3-color aggro control decks that look very similar to this. So yeah, this none of this should be too shocking to you. All right, and we'll just go over some stuff. Again, yeah, we really want to get the most out of our dudes. So our Nimble Mongooses and Werebears and stuff, all of our threshold creatures, so we really need to go hard on that. So of course the 4 copies of Mental Notes, very good with that, as well as the 8 fetch lands and all the cantrips and everything else. So yeah, you can get threshold quite quickly with our good friend Mental Note, which is quite nice. And it really powers up, of course, all of the threshold guys. So that's sweet. And of course, Mental Note just replaces itself too. So yeah, nothing gained, nothing lost there. So that's sweet. Of course, Winter Orb, I mean, this is mostly to be teched out against a lot like the Rock and Landstill, and even like some of the survival decks are also fairly mana hungry. So this is quite good there. Definitely really want to be able to beat those decks because they can go bigger than you. They can do stuff with like a Pernicious Deed or Wrath or a Humility or all sorts of stuff that we don't really want to see. And eventually they'll, once they get enough mana, they can really overpower your threats. So we don't want to do that. Stifle has tons of uses, like against, again, like the Rock or Landstill, you can stifle Deeds, you can stifle Cycle Decrees. Just don't don't try to stifle Standstill. That doesn't work the way you think it would. So yeah, Stifle does everything, right? Hits fetches, hits random crap. Yeah, and it can really, again, even just a couple copies of Stifle can really play with someone's head. Just like, just a couple copies of the Daze really makes them think, all right, can I wait an extra turn? Do I have to cast this now? So on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, again, nothing here is too weird. Like this is kind of like the same sort of style of deck that people have been playing for like 20 years, right? Ever since Miracle Grow. You guys are all pretty familiar with this kind of protect the queen strategy. And it's very good here, right, with Nimble Mongoose. Mongoose just being an excellent card, just whooping the crap out of everything, dodging, just like dabbing on Swords to Plowshares, dabbing on Lightning Bolt, dabbing on Smother. I mean, just dabbing. Just stop dabbing, you fool. But it can't. It can't. It will never stop dabbing. And it has great art, too. Although I don't know why it's Nimble Mongoose when there's like 8 of them in this picture. Like I count 3, 4 maybe. I mean, they are all over this Cobra. That Cobra is not happy. He looks pretty pissed. But yeah, protect the queen. Just kind of, I think this is originally a strategy, like in chess. I think that's where it got its name from. But you just basically have one threat. You protect it with counter magic, disrupt your opponent, keep him off kilter long enough to finish the job with a mongoose or werebear or something. So yeah, yeah. Um, there you go. Pretty easy peasy stuff, right? Probably not telling you anything new. Yeah, and that's the nice thing about this deck. It's pretty easy to play. Um, this kind of strategies are pretty fun though, so I like that. Um, and lots of cantrips, and that's the nice thing about cantrips. You can find all sorts of your sideboard cards. Very very nice, very very sweet. So you're never like, oh crap, I'll never be able to draw this card. It's just kind of luck. Well, you'd be able to cantrip into it, of course, with Portent and all those good things. And there's tons of options too. Lots of options, lots of good cards. And depending on how grindy you want to go, like Gaia Skyfolk. This could be maybe better in some metagames than, say, Meddling Mage, right? Because just having evasion just makes it a much better attacker, of course, and can deal more damage that way. Call the Herd, this is obviously quite good against just grindy mid-range decks. Gives you, lets you use your graveyard a little bit, right? Stuff like Memory Lapse, this may or may not be better than something like Counterspell, because just buying you the turn is really strong, really powerful. And the easier casting cost might matter. Again, Wasteland, maybe a couple Wasteland in addition. Misdirection, this is if you see a ton of removal spells, something like Misdirection against Sly and things like that is really good. Queer Dryad, another one. Again, this card's sweet, but it's harder to protect without force and things like that. And you really need stuff like Gush to generate a ton of cards and be able to really get Dryad up bigger than something like a 4/4 Werebear or whatever, which is kind of the slot it's competing with. Urza's Bauble, this one's actually pretty good because again, just a free cantrip, but it doesn't give you a ton of deck manipulation like something like Opt or Sleight of Hand would. Armageddon, I can see playing maybe an Armageddon in the sideboard or maybe in addition to the main deck if you just want another to split up your mass land destruction kind of stuff. Predict, this card's very sweet with Portent, very good with Portent, or just in general, right? It can shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? You can mill yourself, right, and get closer to what you need. And of course, it can draw you 2 cards if you name right, or set it up right with Opt or things like that. So that Predict could be something really cool to try out. And the deck is actually relatively cheap. You don't have to play the Sylvan Library. That can be replaced with more, let's see, more Ops or Sleight of Hands or something. I mean, mages aren't that expensive, or neither really are like Yav Coasts. I mean, the only really expensive stuff would be the fetches. Like I think they're like 70 something bucks for the Onslaught ones, which is unfortunate. I think the Cons ones are a little cheaper, like 30 or 40. But if you already have those, the deck itself is pretty cheap. I mean, obviously, like, what's the other expensive card? Winter Warp, this is another highly played card in basically every format it's legal in. So Warp is really good. You only need a couple. And like I said, you could even replace that with Armageddon. There's a bunch of white-bordered Armageddons that are real cheap. And that's the cool thing about this deck. Actually pretty dang cheap. And even if you didn't have all the fetches, you could replace a couple of them with Painlands, right? Some Attica Wastes, or a Brushland or something. So, you got options. You got options. So there's a lot going on here. A lot of good stuff. Nice, cheapish sort of deck. And the expensive cards that are in it are, cards that you can play pretty much everywhere, right? So yeah, there you go. There you go. So lots of good stuff here. Lots of awesome things. I want to arm you with the correct knowledge. Is that maybe a maybe a bad joke? Is it too many bear puns? Too many werebear puns? You know. But anyways, guys, yeah, not much to say here. Deck is pretty self-explanatory, plays itself in some respects, but there's a lot you can do. It's a really fun deck, a lot to customize it. Even the creature base, a lot of different stuff going on. I even forgot Peak. Peak could be an okay card 2 or 3 copies or something, right? Gives you a bunch of extra information, replaces itself, can't go wrong. So that's sweet. Everyone likes Peek. But anyways, so thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you play this deck. It's really fun. Who doesn't like casting Mental Note and getting big old Werebears? Everyone loves Werebear. So yeah, thanks for stopping by, guys, and have a great day.